Can't get y'all.
We're going to call to order Dayton Public School Board meeting at 12:08. If we would, let's stand. Roll call.
President Bailey,
Here.
Dr. Goodwin,
Here.
Mr. Lacy,
Here.
Mr. Smith,
Here.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Present.
Mr. Walker,
He's absent.
Ms. Garrison.
Oh, he's got an excuse absent.
Okay. Ms. Garrison,
Present.
6 present.
Okay, for the Pledge of Allegiance. This time we're going to have a discussion for the levy.
Dr. Bailey, do you mind if I just give an overview?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to everyone, and especially the board members. I want to say, first of all, thank you for even having this discussion. It's been since November of 2008 that a levy has been passed in Dayton Public Schools at 4.9 mils as an operating levy. In the interim time, which is 17, now 18 years, Kettering, Oakwood, Centerville, and other districts have passed levies. So we have gone almost 2 decades using cost-cutting measures and reallocating finances so that we can stay solvent and provide services for kids. And I want to thank the Treasurer's Office. It's Treasurer Abraha actually has been the treasurer for most of that time, but the time has come for us to determine how we can provide additional financial supports for our students. And so today we're going to be discussing a resolution of necessity, 2 different versions for levies for Dayton Public Schools, and I will let the board take it from here.
Question for you. Is there a presentation?
Yes, there is, but I thought maybe you had some questions and then we go, or you want a presentation first?
Then I'm gonna have questions.
Okay.
Presentation.
Then
Which
I'll have
presentations
questions.
first?
I mean, we
Because
just here right
I was,
now.
I was trying to, let y'all.
Let's see what you got.
Okay. Dan, you ready?
Good.
Perfect.
So thanks for having me. Appreciate it. We okay to start?
Yes.
Tilt
Okay.
that a little bit. Right. This side is a little hard to see.
Yeah, it's pushing the bottom there, but it'll be all right.
You break it, you buy it.
All right, so we want to talk a little bit about the financial goals for the district going forward here for 2026, how that relates to the levy and how we're pulling all this together. Dr. Lawrence, do you want me to proceed or do you want to?
Nope, you go right
Okay,
ahead.
all right.
jump in.
Okay.
It's the academics.
All right. So the 4 key goals that we're looking at, one, Dr. Lawrence already referenced, is continue to right size the operation through attrition, cost-cutting measures, and reorganization as you have done for the last almost 20 years. Second goal is to stabilize some of the volatility that we see coming from the state, and some of that is really driving the 5 mil or a levy, a tax levy of some size, but we think it's about 5 mils that you need to look at passing as a necessity. And then the implementation of the academic transformation. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you've made a lot of progress from a student standpoint, particularly over the last 5 years that were very, very difficult, and talk about some of the needs that need to continue with that with students, and then the capital planning that we've looked at for the district as well to make sure that the facilities and the projects don't come back to surprise you after you go out and pass a levy. And so those are kind of the 4 areas that we want to look at as we go through the presentation. The first thing, if we could go to the next slide, the first thing we want to take just a minute, and I think Dayton Public has a lot to be proud of. I think you've done an amazing job of keeping a solid balance for the last 5 years. If you think about everything that the district has been through and schools as a whole have been through, I think it's worth mentioning and kind of just giving a quick review at a high level. COVID came within the last 5 years. COVID was here. You had to retool the way instruction was delivered. You had to redo pretty much everything across the board. ESSER came along to help pay for that, but ESSER was its own set of challenges. Where can you use the money? Where does the money go for? What can we do with it that's really going to get done what needs to get done? And so that presented its own, and there was no guidance when that came out. For those of you that were here, you might remember, here's the money, and there wasn't a lot of guidance, but then 18 months later, there was guidance, and you had to be compliant and had to adapt and adjust. And then the transition back. So coming back off of those COVID needs and how that ESSER was helping and now it's not helping, and how do we get back to regular everyday life was a part of that financial picture that had to be managed. And through it all, you maintained a positive balance on the books as you were making all of those changes. Fair funding formula came and then went, right? So it was going to save the world and it was going great, and then the state didn't fund it all, and now we're back to we're probably not using the fair funding formula anymore. We saw record inflation and changes in the labor market, and so there had to be adjustments made in compensation kind of across the board, and so that had to be done. Balances and then threats to the balances. So through all of this, you're navigating those needs for your students, putting the right things in place, and keeping a solid cash balance, only to be faced recently then with we may take some of your balances. Your cash balances are going to have to go away. So you had to address that as well. And the capital planning needs throughout the district over the last few years have been great, and now you have a capital plan put together to address those needs on top of all of the rest. So just looking back over the next 5 years, those were the challenges to your bottom line and to your financials that the district weathered. And you weathered that with a solid cash balance and a no increase of tax, no tax ask for your constituents. So you didn't go back and put it on the taxpayers to figure out how to pay for it. You got it done. So meanwhile, what happened with the students? And I think that's a really super impressive component to all of this while you're managing through all of those things that we want to talk about quickly.
Hey, thanks, Dan. I think we worked really hard with the Treasurer's Office and other outside entities to keep asking ourselves, what's the main thing? Why do we do this work? Why do you need additional assets and resources? Actually, we have lots of T-shirts around the district saying keep the main thing the main thing. So for us, it's students. And you can see, and I'm going to thank my predecessor too, didn't do this alone. And so together, over the last 5 years, school year 21 until now, you see a consistent increase in the performance index. We did have a meeting today to say that we need to begin to rapidly change that, and we have some ideas around how to do that. But that's one component of how we want to keep the main thing, keep focusing on kids, and while we still need additional resources to do that. I'll take the next slide. You can see our attendance, again, over the last 5 years, consistently an arrow, a slope going up. We want to continue to move forward with our attendance. Attendance is at the core of what we do academically. If you're not here, we can't get results. And then our report card, 4 out of 5 stars on career tech, which is the basis of how we're operating now. Our school transformation K-12, but in particular middle school to high school now, and Ford NGL is rooted in this space right here in this report card, and we want to continue to move forward. We were just 5 or 6 kids away from getting a 5-star in this career tech space. This is where the money is made right now. We definitely want to make sure the kids are reading on the earlier end, and we had a presentation last month to talk about our K-3 literacy and how we're moving forward. But on the back end, what happens when they're leaving, and we are rapidly moving toward being a district of excellence on the back end while we work on the front end.
So progress with everything that you needed with the students. At the same time, all of those things happened. I think is something you should be super proud of in managing to those levels and keeping the cash balances and the sustainable budget as you did. So the next 5 years, when we look at what's coming, we don't think it's going to be any easier from a financial standpoint. We've got a lot of volatility, as you know, coming forth from the state. We're not sure which way that funding formula is going to go. There's a lot of property tax reform, property tax legislation that's gone through. There's probably more coming. And there's a potential referendum and changes in tax collection. So all of those are putting pressure on your financials for the next 5 years as well as we look forward. Enrollment pressures and changes that might happen with vouchers in those systems is also at play. And the continued attrition and cost opportunities as the last bits of the ESSER impact and what we went through with all that have to be kind of sorted out going through the next year or two. So those pressures are going to continue, and we know about those. I'm sure there are some over the next 5 years, some financial pressures that we do not know are coming. And so that's one of the reasons that we're looking at the levy that is in front of you today as one of the key performance items for 2026 to stabilize your financial needs. We don't expect that there will be massive changes in academics as far as you won't need to do anything different, right? There's a continued push to continue that forward line moving forward. If you will, the forward progress, that you've made in the past is still on the table for the next 5 years. And so while these financial pressures continue to come at you and continue to be seen for the bottom line, you're going to need to continue to invest in new programs, and academic investment is going to be a major part of what you've got to balance. Go forward. So this is the financial forecast last approved. I know you're getting ready to do another one, but the last financial forecast shows insufficient funds coming from the state, shows the overall expenses exceeding revenue year after year after year now. So there's a deficit spend, and that cash balance then is the yellow line that you see there, year with 26 through 2030, and you can see about in 2028, 2029, you're under budget, you're going into the red. You don't have that balance that you've protected to this point. So this financial plan, go to the next slide, please, is to fix that, is to change your 5-year forecast from that deficit that you see coming into something that's a little more solid, so that you have, again, the yellow line being a cash balance that is there to lean on, and a balanced budget where the revenue and expense are at least in sync or operating as much in the black as possible. I know there's been some drafts and some things put together to look at what kind of reductions need to be made alongside, and they're significant, alongside with a levy that will help take away the volatility that you're seeing come over from the state funding. We went pretty quick. Any questions so far? So next steps forward, you've got a resolution today, a resolution of necessity. There are 2 options that are the first step in putting that levy on the ballot. The second thing is to identify attrition options as retirements come in this year, and the 2027 cost cutting that I know there's some drafts looking at how we might better balance to these revenue streams. And finally, the capital plan financing, so you don't get surprised with capital needs in the middle of everything else that you're doing. I'll talk about the levy, since that's the immediate action that's in front of you for just a minute. That it's a 5 mil or a 5 mil plus 2 mil PI levy. Those are the 2 choices that you have in front of you today. The 5 mil would be just strictly for operations. There's a 5 mil and a 2 mil for PI. That would make a total of 7 also in front of you. So we need to make a selection on that as far as a resolution of necessity. Once you act on that resolution of necessity goes to the county auditor. The county auditor will certify back to say that those indeed are the correct numbers, or what the numbers should be, or what they'll generate. And then you will need to take a second action to proceed with putting the levy on the ballot at another board meeting prior to February 4th. So there's not a lot of time to get on for the May ballot issue, but that's the order of things, and we are prepared to get you there and get that certification back, I think, from the county auditor on Monday.
Go ahead. Dr. Bouchard.
So thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Dr. Lawrence, for bringing this forward. I will say that I'm not a fan of the timing that we got on it, but I know we have been talking about this as a board since I've gotten on the board in 2022. So I do appreciate that you guys have finally brought it to us to get on there. And I see that we are on you guys are on a tight timeline, because the only thing we have to do is either approve in the affirmative or not approve of it, and that piece of it. I will say that based not only what you've given us, but the other things that I've seen in the superintendent's update, as well as I've heard from our finance committee, I do think it is necessary to see kind of where we are, and this at least gives you one of two shots to get the support needed to continue to operate, as this is now, I believe, our third year outside of our ESSER funds. Is that correct?
You are
Yeah, they
correct.
expired
Right.
September of '23.
Right, and Board Member Reiner has talked frequently over the last, actually every year I've been here, about how the Fair Funding Act is only fair in name. So I do appreciate you guys bringing that back to us, and I do hope that if we do pass this today, you are able to do the timelines, because there's still a lot more work to be done, because again, it wasn't a one-stop solution. The 5 mil, what amount does 5 mils calculate to in dollars that we are projecting will come in?
$10,445,000.
And that would
Roughly.
start at what date if it passed?
The first half would be in 2027,
Okay.
as far as fiscal years go, right? So the full collection would be calendar year 2027. The first half would be on the back end of the fiscal year 27.
Okay, and we don't have the options up yet, but I heard there were 2 options. So if we pass one option, one or the other, it'd be that 10 million you just stated of the 5 mil. And if
Yeah.
we pass both options and put both on the levy, then we would be asking voters. Actually, how much is that for a person to pay? What does that come down for, 100,000?
For a $100,000 home, it's $175 for the 5 mil levy. And for the 7 mil, do you know that?
245.
245.
I knew the side down there would have to
She got it.
go.
Yeah, she's on it.
So, yeah, and that's per year, correct?
That's per year.
Additional
Yes.
tax on there, so.
Yes.
Well, thank you, I appreciate it. I do hope that our board does pass it to give you guys an opportunity, because everything we talked about affects the people's jobs and the resources that they do to provide education to kids. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Smith?
Reiner can go, I think she was up too.
Oh,
Oh, no, go ahead.
All right, are we basing these projections off our current enrollment, or are we projecting it off of an increase, a decline? Like we saw with the last time that we had a levy, we ended up collecting less than what we projected, correct? So what are we, and it's probably too for Dr. Lawrence and maybe our church, what are we basing these projections off of? And then what are we doing inside of that to make sure that we're collecting what we're wanting to go out and collect? Because when you're saying these things, I don't want voters to go out and say, okay, last time we passed something like this, they said we were supposed to get X amount of dollars, and we didn't get those amounts of dollars because of other things that happened throughout, inside DPS, outside of DPS, foreclosure crisis, decreasing enrollment, things like, so what are we basing what we think this is gonna give us off of?
Yeah, so what's baked into this right now is the current enrollment that's in the forecast, which is flat enrollment. I wish I could say, oh, you'll get exactly what we're estimating. Nobody can say that right now, because we don't know how they will change property tax. And so we could end up doing this and not collect everything that we thought we were going to collect, because they changed the way the property tax works. So it's not, I can't say that, oh yeah, it's guaranteed based on flat enrollment that we'll get that. But it is based on a flat enrollment structure, and the flat enrollment really drives more of the state funding and the expense than it does what the levy generation will be. The levy generation will stay the same regardless of the enrollment. Does that help?
Somewhat. I just want to see kind of where we're basing it. I know that's been a point of consternation in different spaces is that when you're talking about these things, people want a transparency, but sometimes the transparency doesn't always give you the answers that you think you're gonna get because there's so many other factors that go into the funding formulas.
That's right.
Appreciate it.
Very well said, sir.
Ms. Reinhardt?
Thank you, President Bailey. Thank you for joining us today. This was really informative. The first thing I would like to say is, so I have served 2 full terms. I'm in my 3rd term now. When I came in to DPS as a board member 8 years ago, we talked very frequently about the fact that we had not passed a levy for 10 years prior to that, which is very, very impressive in terms of our fiscal responsibility and the way we have managed our resources. And to be here even 8 years later and now say we have not had to pass a levy for 18 years is very significant. And I would like to thank every single person in the district for the last 18 years who has been responsible for that, particularly the treasurer. Thank you, Treasurer Abraha. But I'm grateful that we are approaching this with thoughtfulness. I would like to say, I personally would, I refer to the property tax changes not as property tax reform. Instead, this is funding elimination for vital public services, not just public schools. But I'm going to talk about this in terms of public schools. 90% of students in Ohio attend public schools, and we have eliminated a great deal, very necessary portion of our funding stream. Think about that when you vote, and think about the things that bring value to our communities, that make our communities strong. I'm not going to refer to this as property tax reform. And the last thing I would like to pose as a question to my board members, in November, we all attended the Capitol Conference, and there were some really good sessions about levies. I made sure to go to Levy 101 presentations and the legal necessity, the legal requirements and the boundaries that boards are under, that we need to really be careful that we are doing everything above board and that we are following the law in terms of how we talk about the levy and how we move forward from here. So, board members, did everybody get a chance to attend the legal rules for undergoing a levy process?
Yes.
Okay.
OSBA.
Okay. Well, just
I
to
attended.
refresh our memories, yeah, there were a couple other people there. President Bailey, if it's okay, I still have the slide deck and my notes from that presentation. If we could put that on the agenda for the next meeting, I'm happy to share my notes and share the slide deck to make sure that we are doing everything above board and we are not risking any sort of legal repercussions.
That'll be fine.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes. I wasn't here, of course, on any of the committees, even from an external community perspective, when these discussions were had over the past 8 years. So if you're able to give me some information on how we're working with some of our community partners like City of Dayton and Montgomery County, more specifically City of Dayton, who I think would be a great partner if it wasn't already something that was established to, for them to attract residents to this area, because of course, the more people we have come into the area, the more we increase our population, the more funding that can benefit us with the property taxes, should this levy, pass. So just wanting to know a little bit more about those committees that met in the past, and if they're gonna continue to meet and plan, or if there's gonna be, what is the external planning around this as you guys move forward to putting this on the ballot for May. Who's going to be working this? What does that team look like? And is that team being collaborative across Montgomery County and the City of Dayton to ensure, because we can attract the students, but we really need to attract more residents to this area and to hopefully keep them here in the Dayton area.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. As we go to put this on, all of that will start to come together and we'll start putting those pieces in place. The first piece is the resolution of necessity, because we need to kind of narrow down what's the amount and how much, where we're going forward. The second component will be how do we talk about that with all of those committees and those groups before we do the resolution, to proceed, and then beyond that, between the time that happens and the vote happens in May. So there's a big span here between the point where the board says, yep, we're going on the ballot, to when that ballot actually happens. And so during that time period, some of those groups will be critical in working with and talking about how this is going together. I don't know all of the past communications. Certainly there's committee after committee and groups that we work with religiously inside the city and the county to talk about where we are and where we're going. I don't know all the details of those conversations standing here, but we could certainly get you more information on that in the days ahead.
Thank you.
Ms. Lacy?
Okay, so should it pass in May, the money would start coming in, it went in January of 2027?
Yes. It would be collected first in January of 2027.
Okay.
It would be the first tax bill.
But if we waited till November,
Also January of 27. So,
Half of it.
so you pass it, in the year that you pass, the collection starts the year following.
okay.
So if we pass in May, it will start collection in January. If we pass in November, it starts collection in January.
And but the board does not want to wait until November?
Would they, if you guys, can I ask a question on your question? If you were unsuccessful in May, would you also go again in November?
That would be,
Well, I'm asking the staff because you
Yeah.
guys are the one putting it, so,
That's a yes.
okay, so it's possible to do both. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the rationale for the expedition of the reconciliation now, because we wanted to have two shots at it. So that was why.
Okay, I mean, I would just go in November. I mean, I've been in two levies. One that we lost that was in the spring, and one that we were successful in the fall. Can I ask if it's okay with the chair, because this is not normal, if I could direct a question to some of the people that have political experience, Mr. Smith. Don't you think that our voters would be out in November?
I think there's two sides of it. We can talk about it a lot of it. So from what I've seen and experienced, I think there's the numbers of what you see. There's also the need to get the public understanding. And I think where the situation you guys are in, what I do think that either way we go, we have to present a clear forecast for the community. And I think that's what happened before too, is that's one of the reasons the levy passed in 2008, is that people saw the ridiculous amount of cuts and things that happened when the levy didn't pass previously. And you don't want people to go into this doom and gloom space of what do we do if we don't pass this, or what's at stake. And so I see both sides. I do think there's some merit to what Mr. Lacy's saying, but I also see why we're talking about doing this now, although I do not like the timing of putting something and saying we need you guys to vote on this before next week, because that sends a message of what is the communication or lack of communication. But I think for any time we're talking about a levy, for me, you want to be able to tell voters what is clearly at stake. I think that's what the last time we had a levy passed here, people saw this. They saw jobs go. That's one of the reasons, if you look at DECA was more in the DPS vote and that levy didn't pass. There's so many things that have happened because of not passing it. So where even when we talk about we haven't passed a levy in this amount of years, that was some of the consternation with people about putting one up, is what happens if we do not pass it. Because that was disastrous and we saw the cuts that happened. And I think that it deserves some conversation. So I would ask, you said now, we would need to send it over no later than the 4th, correct? To be able to be up when?
Today.
And I'm talking about a finalized, like finalized, it has to be over
The 3rd.
by the 3rd. Yeah?
And Mr. Smith, I want to say that from a communication standpoint, I've been back 4 years, and I've heard it the 4 years I've been back. I know the conversation was out there before. I just made a decision to take all those conversations and ask the board to make a decision. So I don't know that there's been a lack of communication. It's been something I've heard for a long time. I heard it even before I left in 2016.
No, that's, I would say, and I'm not gonna, communicating about the need for something is not the same as communicating about, I'm going to make the decision to put this up for you to vote. It's like saying, if we're thinking, all right, for 5 years, we've been wondering if we're gonna close X school.
Right.
That's different from saying, all right, we've had conversations about, are we gonna do it? We're gonna call a meeting tomorrow to vote on closing X school. That is not the same when we talk about the communications, because there's so many things that go into it about how much you're asking for. That is also what, if we look back on the last levies that we put up that failed and passed, if we remember, the number that we
15 mil.
the number that we sought was a lot lower the next
Oh.
time they put it up as well.
The one that
Like-
failed, how much was that? That was 15.
It was a few meals above the previous
10.
one, so
Was it 10?
there
I
was,
think it was around 10.
Dr. Max.
and so
Dr. Max.
Yeah.
there are so many things that go into those things that people want to know. People want to know there's a lot of work, and I either way it goes, whatever we decide today and whenever we go, it's going to be a lot of work, even around just letting people know what meals means. Like, there are people who think that meals means million and not the percentage that it really is calculated off of. So I think whatever happens, we need to be ready to go, and that means that we have to be clear, transparent, and create the story of what we're trying to do. But I appreciate Mr. Lacy's concern, because that was one of the concerns I had as well.
I thank you, I thank you. Yeah, I mean, yeah, this vote starts it in motion, but the no turn back would be a vote in February or
Yeah, next
Yeah.
week.
Like a week,
next week, yeah.
next week, less than a week.
Or a few, yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
May I make one comment, Mr. President? One thing just to note, the conversation about this has been going on for a while. Recall that last year, it was biennium, and so the state started talking about what the financing would look like back in March and April last year. And so to go on to the ballot or to talk about, to seek that money while the state's trying to figure out what they are or aren't going to fund, lots of schools found themselves in this exact same place and are right now here because they're going to fund it this way, then they're not going to fund it. Oh, and by the way, we're going to take your cash balances. I know you went through that. Do we move cash here? Do we move it there? What do we do? Was property tax happening? So I wouldn't want to lead anybody that's watching this on to think that this was a last minute kind of decision. It had to be timed out with all of that indecision that was happening at the state level. And even today, we don't know all of that, which is part of the reason for the ask, is because we can't leave it to Columbus to try to fix our city, right? So that's, I just want to make sure that gets said because that's pretty important in your consideration. It's not like it was all just weighted and just thrown together. This has been part of that, watching that legislative process play out. So let's go.
That's a good point. Board Member Lacy, to give a little bit more of an answer to your question too, the turnout in May is one question versus the turnout in November. And yes, turnout in November will be significantly higher. However, when looking at levy passages, there is a May and August and November possibility. The August is always historically very low for approval and passage of levies. May and November are our best bets. So, and this is for the public as well too. So we probably would not want to consider August, but May and November are good options.
Dr. Gawai?
Yes, so I would like to, because I do think that part of the story is missing from this one, and it is something that I would probably want to see more in one of our regular meetings and not in the special meetings, but the conversation on cuts and what that looks like and the reality of if a levy does pass, whether it is in May, in November, the money still doesn't come in until 2027. So how long would we be able to stretch some things? Because the reality is, without additional funds, we have to let some things go. And I just don't want people to be surprised if, like, those type of positions on the block, and I want to know how long we can stretch if we are successful in this piece to maintain some of these, because again, these are people's jobs, these are people's livelihoods, and everything in this economy in the last year has skyrocketed on that trajectory. So whether we do now or later, the money still doesn't come until 2027. Gotta know what are we actually looking at, and if it is failed, if it does fail, just for like that full presentation, so not only so people can prepare, because I mean you have to think about your livelihood and your family, and you have to start making these decisions based on it. And as much, I mean, yeah, that's just that piece. I just want to see that, so the other individuals, because no one on this board works here. So whether it passes or fails, it doesn't affect our livelihoods in that type of way, so. Thanks.
Mr. Lacy?
I thought it was Garrison's.
Oh, go ahead, Ms.
Oh,
Garrison.
no problem. So I wanted to piggyback on what Joe had mentioned. Those are my thoughts exactly. With if the funding is still coming in 2027 regardless, I think it would be best for us to do our due diligence in doing something that is well thought out, well planned, hitting the community with Q&A questions. I may not have experience with a levy, but I definitely have experience with running a campaign. And there's a lot of work that goes into that with getting buy-in. And as Dr. Goodwine stated, showing people the transparency in the numbers, and if knowing that we can't go back, but if the state, we knew they started having issues last year, there should have been a committee created for levy discussions last year. And come this year, January, we just had 2 board meetings. This could have been a more detailed presentation with some real, information that would be useful for us to move forward for a May decision or a vote. I think it's, and I understand, let's try and do it again, but I don't think, and maybe we could do a quick poll on social media to see what the community thinks about a May levy between now and Monday. I just think we lose a lot of confidence from our constituents when we do something like this, which does look last minute when we had the information last year on how the state was going to move forward with funding. So where was the levy committee last year? So that's just something to think about. Like I said, we can't go back, but I think we owe our constituents. I mean, like I said, the funding's not going to come either way till 2027. So it's not like doing it in November pushes that funding back. It doesn't. I would rather do it right the first time, do it well, do it thought out, and do it with, community feedback and the right support in the community in place, than to do it haphazardly. And then because where's the confidence after that if we don't do it right in May? Where's the voter confidence when it comes back around in November? So that's just my thought.
Mr. Lacy?
I know, I don't think it passed, but I know the legislature was at one time they were gonna try to charge people or charge districts for putting ballots on, putting up ballots. Do they have that? Does it cost us anything to do a levy to the state?
Right now, the cost is just what it costs to put it on the ballot, which will be a little higher in May than it will be in November, but it's not materially
Oh, there is a
different.
cost?
There's a cost to put it
fee
on
or
the ballot.
something?
Yeah, the fee to put it on the ballot. So when there's multiple things on the ballot, that cost is divvied up again amongst all of those things.
Oh, that's how it works?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
But you
May,
don't
there'll
know
be
exactly
multiple
what-
things on in May, so there'll be other folks sharing that cost if you were to go in May. There'll be more on in November, so there'll be more folks sharing that cost in November.
But you don't know exactly what?
I don't remember the cost exactly. No, I don't remember the cost exactly.
So do
but
we
it's
know
not.
it's in the hundreds of thousands, it's in the thousands?
It's in the tens of thousands,
Okay,
I believe, yeah.
and looking at November too, are there other agencies or the city or that we know, that anybody knows is planning one for November?
Only one from the city, they just had those, they used the county's human service, and I don't even know what it was called last time, it was issue 9 first, then it was something else, but I think this year.
I guess that's something, could we find out? Maybe before Monday or
Yeah, I'm about to say,
whatever.
you asked them to bring that back to us before the second one, if
Mhm.
this one passes.
If they, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's for me, when we talk May, November, it's really two things. It's one, May's gonna have a lower turnout naturally. And so it really comes down to, do you think the lower turnout benefits you or hurts you? And do you think a bigger turnout benefits you or hurts you, which then comes into, is there organized or active opposition against what you're doing? That's really what it comes down to is, in May, you're gonna have fewer people out voting, so off time. November, more people would be out voting. It depends on if you think the mindset of the voter is against us or for us. And then you kind of weigh in, all right, in November, would you have more, by then, would you have more time to spin the picture that you need? Would you have more time to get people aware of what you're trying to do? Or do you say, let's go in May, it's gonna be lower people, and we have a lot of good things, some of the things that the superintendent pointed out, and that could carry some of the things that we're talking about. So it really comes down to those things. But I guess we'll gotta get over the first hurdle first, which is just saying that we wanna get ready to do it. Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of my question as well. Like in May, does that kind of give us an outlook as to if it doesn't pass, what it can look like in November? Is that what that means?
You would have some information, from your May results, absolutely. How much of that's applicable and where it applies, I'm not an expert in that area, but you would have some information for sure based on what your results were in May.
Okay. Yeah, most of my questions really have been asked. I just know that, I'm thankful for what I've seen since I've been on the board with how they budgeted money without laying people off and things like that. And I know that we are still in the process of making cuts or finding a way to keep people's jobs. And I do know that we're going to still have to do that all the way up until hopefully we can pass the levy and get that money in 2027. So I do commend our people. Ms. Reiner?
Thank you, President Bailey. So what is the ask for us to vote on today exactly? Is there a resolution? Because I don't see a resolution on board docs.
Refresh.
Thank you. As a follow-up to that question, again, clarifying, we are not being asked to vote today, to vote for a levy. Today, we are just putting things in motion, and the decision will be made at a meeting next week. Is that correct? Today, we're just asked to be putting our ducks in a row in case we want to go down that road. Is that correct?
Yes, we're doing the first step.
Okay.
First one, and then if they meet timeline and things come back the way they shake out, then the second resolution is us putting something on the ballot.
Okay.
But that's saying without doing this, then we wouldn't be putting a levy on if we were to vote no. So in a way,
Correct. This
we're
is-
still voting to say, are we thinking about doing this? Because if we voted no, then you wouldn't have time to do it.
That's
That's
correct.
correct.
All right.
Any other questions?
So, I'm sorry,
Oh.
I just looked at the resolution. So for this resolution says specifically you guys are going after it in May. It doesn't say May or November, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
and okay, so it's 5 and then an additional 7.
Right, there's two different ones on there. So even
No, Okay, I'm hearing no.
One?
It's additional 2.
2, additional 2. 1 is fine.
So you're not asking for 12?
No, absolutely not.
No.
Hello, Mr. Chair, Superintendent, Treasurer. What's that?
We'll put you out of here for that.
Yes, no, I would let myself out for that. I'm Emmett Kelly. I'm with FPT Givens with Joe Schaller. Just reintroduce myself. There are 2 resolutions before you today, and they're both resolutions of necessity for 2 different potential levies. One is for a 5 mil operating expense levy. The other one is for a 5 mil operating expense levy plus a 2 mil permanent improvement levy. We call that a combined levy. Really exceptional language there. But so you can pass both of these today. Consider and pass. If you do, we have to go then take those down to the county auditor to get a certificate of the auditor to provide us the tax valuation and then what these would collect, so that we could fill in the next resolution to proceed, which you would consider at your next board meeting, which I understand is potentially on the 3rd, so that we can get it filed before the 4th. And at that meeting, if you want to proceed with either of those levies, you would select which one you would pass at that meeting. And then we would take that with the auditor certificate and file it at the Board of Elections before 4 p.m. on the 4th. And so if we can get it there on the 3rd, great. If we can get there on the 4th, fine.
So we're going to ask the auditor for 2 certificates, one for 5 and one for 7,
Correct.
not 12.
Not 12. Yep, completely separate.
And we will
and
make
distinct.
sure that he understands that.
The county auditor knows it's coming
Okay.
potentially, and that they would be ready to have it for us, so that's great by them.
I'm sorry, I was waiting on that.
Go ahead, Ms. Pierce.
Not, this isn't for you. I just wanted to see if she's comfortable. Can we get the treasurer's take on this, Ms. Hewitt?
On what?
This levy in May?
I'm good with that.
Okay. I mean, do you have any historics to share from a financial perspective?
From the financial, I know, but historically, I don't know.
Good comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I add one other thing?
I was-
Any resolution you pass, the resolutions of necessity or the resolutions to proceed have to be approved by 2/3 of the board members. So I thought that's critical that you know that as well.
Which would be 5 board members.
That's correct.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. President, would you entertain a motion at this time?
Yes.
I motion to approve both A and B,
Second.
resolutions A and B.
Second.
Do I second
Okay. President Bailey,
it? Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Treasurer says yes, I say yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
He's not here.
Ms. Garrison.
No.
Okay. 5 yeses, 1 no.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Adjourn.
Neil's like, we gotta
Oh,
vote.
that's right. I always forget that.
Slow down.
Slow down.
President Bailey,
Yes.
Dr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yeah.
Ms. Garrison.
Yes.
I'm good.
6 yeses.
Adjourn.
Yeah.